Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. We're joined by somebody who is a great friend of CPAC, who does a lot of work with us on criminal justice reform and is an important voice on all types of public policy and legal questions. Former Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Thanks for being with us, General Whitaker.
I'm glad to be with you today, Matt.
We wanted to reach out to you especially because we are reading so many strange things associated with this 1-6 committee. I know that you've been working with ACU in the development of this new fund called the First Amendment Fund. We're going to put the information on the screen if you want to contribute to this fund. We've gotten a lot of pledges, big and small, from people all over the country who are disgusted by people who are the victims of cancel culture, and it's no worse than when it happens in politics. General Whitaker, give us your take on what the aim is of this 1-6 committee.
Well, obviously, the aim of the 1-6 committee is to destroy the Republican movement, and especially anybody associated with Donald Trump. It's from what I can tell, is they are violating the Constitution. They are, not even following their own enabling statute of, who should be on the committee in the first place, because Nancy Pelosi rejected minority leaders' recommendations. And so, I think the whole thing is a little bit of political theater. And, if it wasn't so serious, Matt, you and I could talk about what an amount of political theater is. But, it was just reported by Tucker Carlson 2 nights ago that this committee has subpoenaed the big phone companies for 3 months of text messages of everybody that they are, having in their investigation currently. And that's outrageous. This Congress cannot dip into our text messages when you're not accused of a crime, when you're not even being investigated for a crime. But Congress is now subpoenaing and demanding these records. And then do we trust Congress, if they get these documents, that they're going to keep them confidential? Of course not.
Of course not. So it's not just the phone records. I understand they're also asking for banking records, which goes along with the desire by the Biden administration to track any financial transaction of as low as $600. When it comes to these phone records and text messages, is this unprecedented? Have these companies followed through on subpoenas from Congress in the past, or are we in a new area? It's certainly somewhat new, because it's hard to say it's a legitimate committee when it has no legislative function and when there's no Republican on the committee approved by the minority leader.
Yeah, there's 2 questions. One is, again, their enabling statute to even have this committee, allowed for 5 members appointed by the minority leader. And that didn't happen. They put on 2 or 3 never-Trumpers, including Liz Cheney, who is hostile to President Trump and anybody that supports President Trump, and is, in a political fight for her own life in Wyoming. And the people of Wyoming, see exactly what she's doing and how hostile she is to free exercise of our political rights and our First Amendment rights. But in addition to that, this unprecedented request from these companies, with the threat of, again, criminal contempt, holding Verizon, AT&T, all these companies, all these banks in criminal contempt, which now used to be a theoretical threat. But as you see with Steve Bannon being charged with 2 misdemeanor contempt of Congress charges, it's gotten very serious. And we've talked about this before, Matt, but, I think Congress needs to enforce their own laws. They need to put people in Congress jail if they're not going to comply with their subpoenas, and actually, have some skin in the game, instead of offloading this to a complicit executive branch that wants to do the same thing, which is to weaken the conservative movement. But, you and I, and especially you, Matt, have been a warrior in these battles really for decades. And, again, I am proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, ACU, and so many other patriots, just defending our constitutional rights. And again, woe to the day where Democrats have this same situation, and because again, what goes around comes around, and it's just so unnecessary. And again, it completely lacks any legislative purpose other than to harass Republicans.
I'm not so sure you're right, Matt. I'm not so sure that Republicans will do the same thing Democrats do. Sometimes I wish we would. This is unprecedented, right? We've never had Republicans, when they had majorities, they've never created a kangaroo court with a congressional committee and not allowed the minority to pick members. That's never happened before. They've never pressured private companies to give information on their political opponents. I mean, I kind of wonder here, General, if this isn't a big taxpayer opposition research project just to find out dirt. And of course, they won't keep it confidential.
Yeah, and I've heard this idea floated recently, and it is not without some persuasive nature, and that is that they're just, the Democrats are using this investigation to create a conservative link chart to see who knows who is connected to each other, what numbers, just like law enforcement would do, quite frankly, for a drug conspiracy. But instead, they're doing it for political speech and trying to figure out how the right is funded and how, they communicate. But, the left is just the master at this. And, things like, Arabella and their whole network of billionaire funders for all these, left-wing groups, they're the ones that ultimately are using all these tools to do harm to the United States of America. And I think this, to your point, I think that this investigation seems to be as much as a fishing expedition and a Oppo research than it is a true investigation for, to create legislature to secure the Capitol.
We've never had a committee created like this, I think, in the history of Congress. We've never had people indicted so quickly by the party, their own party's DOJ, for people that don't comply with congressional subpoenas. As you know, people like Eric Holder were held in contempt by Congress, but never indicted by DOJ for not responding to subpoenas. So that's unprecedented. Is this outreach to get this information from phone companies and banks, is that also unprecedented?
Again, there have been times where Congress has subpoenaed records, but the breadth and scope of this is unprecedented. And, Eric Holder was held in contempt, and the Obama-Biden Department of Justice didn't pursue that. Lois Lerner was held in contempt of Congress, and they didn't pursue that. And, so really, this Department of Justice looks very political. In addition to going after parents and saying that one of the priorities is to go after unruly airline passengers, their other priority appears to be, instead of reducing violent crime in our neighborhoods, appears to be supporting their buddies on Congress and enforcing their contempt votes.
So, Matt Whitaker, where does this end? We have these upwards to almost 50 people have been subpoenaed by this committee. Many of your friends and my friends, you're doing a lot of work to help make sure people have legal representation. You're acting as a counselor. We just do this for a year, or will Republicans finally stand up and just say, we're having nothing to do with this, and we encourage everyone to not participate with this committee that, as Mark Meadows and his counsel just announced?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't go into specific, legal advice that I'm giving, but I would have to say that that this, especially as a political matter, the Republicans in Congress, need to stand up against this committee and bring the discipline that Nancy Pelosi and her cronies are unwilling to bring. Because again, it goes to the credibility of Congress, and I know that they have low approval ratings, and I know that they don't even hold themselves in very high esteem. But ultimately, this type of political witch hunt, and that's what it is detrimental to the republic. And I never can find people on the left that are statesmen and stateswomen that are willing to defend the republic when it's not in their political best interest. And, we always seem, to your point, to, give and give and give and let the left, just go to the far extremes. But, at some point in time, it's about protecting the Constitution and protecting people's First Amendment rights. And when Congress is investigating politically protected speech with this type of enthusiasm and using every tool together with the Department of Justice and this administration, I think the time now is to stand up and for everybody to start calling out this outrageous behavior, Matt.
Matt Whitaker, do you have time for just a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to be right back with General Matt Whitaker after this short break.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Schlapp with CPAC, and it's my privilege to tell you that we've got a very important project that we've just announced, the First Amendment Fund. It's a brand new fund that we've created through our criminal justice reform efforts to raise money to take care of you, Americans who are being canceled and desecrated out there around the country. We know it just happened in Virginia, where parents were called domestic terrorists by the Biden administration, where people who just want to express their political views are canceled left and right. Now we have this terrible specter of a vaccine mandate where you can lose your job or be prevented from going to a restaurant or go to school according to your vaccination status. These are all the things that are happening in this country that are making people realize that America is in a fight to defend the principles that have made her great. If you want to be involved in this important effort, please go to conservative.org, click the link for the First Amendment Fund. Please donate to this C3 to help these victims across the country, including those who are just involved in politics, to make sure they have the legal representation they need to be able to live their great American life.
Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. We're continuing our conversation with former United States Attorney General Matt Whitaker. General Whitaker, we keep wondering where this all ends, and we've been talking about the 1/6 Commission and the desire to chill our First Amendment freedoms, but it doesn't end at just our political speech. It seems to now be going towards our healthcare choices and our ability to kind of govern our own selves when it comes to healthcare. What do you make of the enormity of the absurdity of the whole idea of a vaccine mandate, and why aren't courts standing up more quickly to say the Biden administration can't mandate this type of controversial health care on each and every one of us?
Yeah, and it goes beyond that. Now you have children being vaccinated against their parents' wishes, and so in California, I think these vaccine mandates are not constitutional. And courts are starting to find that. And I think, both in, some of these political free speech cases that we were just talking about and vaccine mandates, I think you're going to see where the Trump appointed justices are the ones that are standing up for, the fundamental values of our republic and that are, enshrined in our Constitution and our foundational text, because the left appears to really be screeching towards and going as fast as they can towards a one-size-fits-all, top-down solution from Washington, D.C., ignoring the law, ignoring constitutions, and just doing with whatever they want, just in hopes of gaining power and control. And it's it's good that groups like that I'm involved in, and ACU and others, fight these at every turn.
The ACLU, when you and I were growing up, we didn't like everything it did, but it used to stand for civil liberties. They no longer do that. They have a big left-wing agenda that's more important to them, this idea of civil liberties. It's strange, but it seems like the ACU and groups like conservative groups are the ones standing up for civil liberties. You work with us on criminal justice reform, where the Democrats have gotten our criminal justice system wrong over and over and over again. It's Republicans who are leading the charge on reform. Is this also going to be true, where you could have a left-right coalition to try to stop these vaccine mandates and other mandates that could come from the federal government that concern what we eat and the medicine we choose to take?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you just wonder if the left, is really ever acting in good faith anymore. Some of these things that they would have joined with us hand in hand, making sure that government overreach, no matter, again, we got to follow our Constitution. If we don't pass laws and that are signed by the president, passed by both houses of Congress, and we continue to play these games where we go to the executive branch and they just issue edicts, I mean, that's not really a a constitutional republic anymore. And I hope that people on the left of good faith and fair-mindedness will join. But sometimes they appear to be so ideologically driven that it's hard ultimately to get them to sign on because again, all they care about right now is winning elections. But their policies are terrible, and I just think the American people are seeing through it right now.
Matt Whitaker, you look at your country, you look at these topics we just talked about, these unconstitutional rogue powers of the federal government. What's your view of America? Are you still hopeful, or you think we have dark years ahead of us?
I'm still hopeful. I mean, there have been dark years that our predecessors that were engaged in society faced. Whether that was the Civil War, whether that was Reconstruction, whether that was the World Wars, whether that was Vietnam, or even the Beatles coming to America. I mean, all of these things caused disruption, but we soldiered forward. But ultimately, and this is something I talk about everywhere I go, ultimately it boils down to we the people, and that we elect representatives that are going to take our country in the right direction. And we're all accountable for that. And I trust the American people, and I think you're seeing almost a renaissance of an engaged electorate where folks are getting it, whether it's in small town Iowa or whether it's in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere. I think the American citizens are understanding that they have more power than they had, that they can imagine, and that they're going to have to be responsible for healing this country. But I'm always optimistic on the United States of America. There's nothing better that's ever been created or existed, and it's all of our duty to pass the torch to the next generation better than we found it. And I think we have right now a lot of work to do, unfortunately.
Thank you for all your work helping these young former Trump staffers as they face this kangaroo court of Pelosi's justice system in the House of Representatives. We really appreciate what you're doing. Once again, if anybody wants to help, make sure that these folks are getting the proper legal representation, including all these parents, cops, and others who are being fired because of the vaccine or masks or other insanity over pushing CRT into our first responders and police forces. This fund is set up to try to help those folks. Probably can't help everyone, but the more resources we have, the more people we can help. So I can't think of a better person to help us accomplish this goal than you, Matt Whitaker. So keep up the fight.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Good talking to you.
We'll be right back with CPAC Now America Uncanceled after this very short break. Welcome to CPAC Now America Uncanceled. I always love talking to Matt Whitaker. I'm fortunate enough to consider him a friend. His daughter, Allison, has been a fantastic intern here, I think in 2 iterations. He's a great guy, and he's partnering with us on all these questions of criminal justice reform. And I think the most relevant one is how Democrats use the judicial process to punish their political enemies. Now, this is a charge that was leveled at Donald Trump, that he was using his powers in a fascist way to go after his enemies. And it's true that Donald Trump used his powers on Twitter to attack and persecute rhetorically his political enemies, but he didn't use the power of DOJ to go after them. And they were actually criminals. Think about Hillary Clinton. Think about Hunter Biden. These people are guilty of clear crimes. And even they weren't indicted or prosecuted or persecuted under Trump's DOJ. But now, fast forward to the Biden administration, which took a page out of the Obama administration, when the Obama administration went after journalists and they spied on journalists who they didn't like, and they went after the Tea Party movement and tried to silence their voices because this was this new grassroots uprising against the Obama spending and the amnesty and, of course, Obamacare. And now you have Biden's DOJ being led by somebody they said would be a moderate justice on the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland, had he been confirmed And thank you, Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Republican senators who prevented that from happening, because now we can see he's pretty much a partisan hack sitting over there at DOJ, using his powers to aid Nancy Pelosi to go after their political opponents. And the idea that Steve Bannon, you don't have to like Steve Bannon if you don't want to, but the idea that he should have been indicted for simply calling out what this 1-6 commission is, this 1-6 committee is in the House of Representatives, which is it's illegal, it's against congressional regulations, and it essentially silences the Republican majority in the House. Now, I think Steve Bannon and a lot of other people realize that it's a matter of time now before the Republicans take back control in the House. And then we have to ask ourselves as Republicans, as we get these majorities back, and as the American people do what they did in the Commonwealth of Virginia and give us power again, what will we do with that power? Usually Republicans are very humble with the power that's given them. They use it aggressively to cut taxes, and that's about it. And we really try not to settle any scores with our power. I wonder if we have come to the conclusion that that needs to change, that they'll never stop going after us if they realize there's a consequence when they lose power, when we get majorities, and when we can go after clear wrongdoing on their behalf. Let me give you an example. If this 1-6 committee is against all congressional regulations, it's against the separation of powers as they collude with the Biden DOJ to indict anybody that doesn't participate with this committee, is there any law breaking here? I'm not the lawyer. I'm asking the questions. But I think the new Republican majorities are going to have to ask themselves some hard questions, including Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise and these folks who will be running the House of Representatives. What are they going to do to make sure this never happens again? You know, the reason why you hold somebody to account in the legal process is to stop the criminal behavior from occurring in the future. And to me, what the 1-6 committee actually should be studying is how resilient our American democracy is. And that for over 200 years, 250 years, we've been able to disagree and still kind of have unity as a country. And over the course of the last 15 years, that's broken down. And of course, they want to pin all the blame on us. We're the domestic terrorists if we're parents. We're the domestic terrorists if we support Donald Trump. But the real travesty of 1-6 is the travesty of Election Day 2020, when we were caught sleeping and we allowed massive amounts of illegal voting to occur at the ballot box. And that the ramifications of allowing that much illegal activity is the biggest problem in our politics, which is you have a lot of people that wonder if their vote matters. And let me tell you, it still does. So please go vote. But they're also wondering if, their vote is diluted by all these illegal votes. And when you have people like David Perdue running for governor in Georgia, when you have people like Jody Hice running for Secretary of State in Georgia, when you have candidates like Jim Layman in Arizona who's running to stop fraud in Arizona, when you pull all this together, you realize there's a consequence to what the Democrats have done in all these ways. And the Committee on 1-6, which should be focused on what ails this country, is only focused on dirt they can find on Donald Trump and on his allies. And as an ally of Donald Trump, I would simply say, game on. You want to fight this way? The American people are going to see what this new radicalized Democratic Party is all about. They're not trying to just accomplish big government and less constitution. They're actually engaged in changing the outcomes of what the American people want, both from the public policies they want and even when it comes to the elections. And how do you know that they're covering up for illegal voting in the election? They won't even allow Kevin McCarthy to make the picks to the committee. And they've picked some pseudo fake Republicans to sit in for the Republicans they wanted to pick. Isn't that kind of what they did to us in the election with our votes as well? This is a theme, folks, and we got to stand up and call it out. And I do think we have to hold our Republican congressmen and senators accountable. Contact your congressman today. Contact your senators today. Ask them to speak up and against the 1-6 committee. Ask them to hold these Democrats accountable. And for each one of you that want to help us in our fundraising efforts for the First Amendment Fund, just go to our website at conservative.org. click on the link for the fund and do all you can to help us out. We're going to continue to talk about the issues associated with the 1-6 committee. We're going to make some powerful people mad at us. That's just the way it is in politics in America these days, and we're okay with it. We love the fact that you keep tuning in and watching the show. We thank Matt Whitaker for all the great work he's doing. What a great former Attorney General he truly is, helping us with criminal justice reform. And we have a lot of great guests coming up, and we wish you all a very Merry Christmas. And on this very special day, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, we wish that you will remember the reason for the season, because that's what brings us joy. God bless you all, and take care.